Hey guys, and welcome to the show. We have the other scripting guy, Stephen Mathews, back to talk to us about some more PowerShell stuff. So without further ado, let's play the music. Hey Stephen, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. So you haven't heard the intro yet, but I introduced you as the other scripting guy.
Oh, God. No
So
pressure.
no pressure whatsoever. No, none whatsoever. But man, I'm excited to have you back. I've watched you save the day several times using PowerShell and PowerShell scripts, and I'm always excited to talk about that topic, especially with you because you are pretty darn good at it. And so, what do you have for us today?
So today we're going to be looking at my most common commandlets. I went through all my scripts and I looked at what commandlets I actually use the most, and then how those, and some real world examples of what I do with them in my scripts.
Okay, awesome.
All right, so as you can see here, this is my ICE window, and I went ahead and queued up the commands and some examples that I use with them. The most common commands that I use are going to be like your filters and your select and your sorting. So as you can see here, one of the things I went ahead and did is I got a bunch of user properties from my personal get.ad, my personal domain, and piped them to the $80 users variable. And here you can see I have the where object. That's going to be your advanced filter. So a lot of these commands, they have built-in filtering, like 80 users has -filter, and then you can do like enabled equals true or anything like that. But a lot of times those are limited to just one filter. So if you want to filter on multiple properties, you end up piping it to the where object. So as you can see what I have highlighted here, it's going to find accounts where the account name is like ADM that's been created within the last 90 days and that has an email address. I'm actually going to comment this one out because I don't have email in my personal domain. So with the where object,
so hey,
what's that?
Oh, hang on just a second. So I just want to make sure that I understand this. So you're doing $80 users. That's a variable that you're defining.
Yes.
And that variable is being defined as get80 user, which is a commandlet.
Yep.
And -filter asterisk means pull everything in.
Right.
-properties asterisk means pull all the properties in. -server allows us to specify the server we're going to connect to, and then credentials allows you to pass the credentials that you have in the $cred variable.
Yeah, so the reason I had to do that is because I'm on the Microsoft network. So if I ran this command, it would default to the Microsoft domain. I had to specify what domain controller I wanted it to talk to.
Okay, and then you're using the where object below to define properties that you're going to look for in $80 users because you've already gotten all of that data by calling the commandlet.
Indeed. So if I didn't throw all the properties in here with that asterisk, the creation time wouldn't be on there. That's not a property that's returned automatically.
Ah. Okay, really cool. That's cool, man. I just wanted to make sure I was getting it.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and run this with the F8. And, of course, that didn't come back with anything. Stand by 1 second. And so as you can see, it went ahead and it ran, it returned all the users that have these different filters on here. Now, with the where object, you got to be careful of putting the ands and ors on there. If you don't specify anything, you have one of these on each line, it's going to do an or. So it's going to be all users that are enabled, or the same account name is like ADM, starts with ADM, or so on and so forth. You can also specify if you want to link them together with an and that's how you would get your advanced queries. So make sure you add the and or depending on what you're doing with it. Some of the advanced things I do is typically we only want to look at enabled accounts. So you could have that up here in the initial filter. And this will give you your enabled accounts. But if you want to add anything else to that filter, you're going to have to use a where object. And so that's how I would use the where object with the get80 user commandlet.
Cool.
Now going on, I'm going to do a get child item for a file path, and I want to find a directory that matches OneDrive in its name and has the name PowerShell. So I'm going to throw those ands on there.
Okay. And so when we and, both statements have to be true.
Right. Actually, all three statements have to be true.
All three statements have to be true.
So it's going to check underneath my user profile. It's going to find all the objects that have that are a directory, not files, has OneDrive in the full name, which right here you can see my OneDrive, and the name of the folder matches Windows PowerShell.
Oh, so it already ran.
Yep.
That's pretty quick.
So here's another one. I got a VM on my machine that I'm running, and I want to get its IP address, the .4 IP address. So I'm going to run this get VM network adapter, which will go through and it will check all the network, it will get all the network information of my virtual machine here. And I put that in parentheses, and then I put this dot IP addresses. That's a property of that object that's going to be returned. And I only want the IP addresses that are formatted in a star.star.star format.
Okay.
So this is going to return just the IP address of my virtual machine. So you can use that, and then you can remote desktop directly to that IP address.
Oh, that's cool.
And then another way to that I would use my where object is I have an Azure account, and I got virtual machines up there, and I want to look at the virtual hard disks that are in this container, and I want the names of them that match 2012, because my naming convention I have on there based on the operating system. So this shows me all the disks and the full name of the disk with 2012 in it. So I know these are my DCs, and then you know, I got the status, and it tells me the different types of VHDs that they are. All right, so that about wraps it up for the where object.
That's now, pretty cool. So, hey, hang on. So I'm sure there's a way to do this. Is there a way to figure out which VMs are up and running?
Oh, yeah. That would...
Yeah. I mean, you may not have a demo for that, but I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, there is definitely a way to do that. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay, no worries.
Okay, so where were we? So going after the where object, typically once you filter it down to just the objects you want to work with, because that's the whole idea here, you sort them by what type of, by usually what order you want to do things in. Sort, it can be useful. You don't need it a lot of times, but I end up sorting a lot of my objects. So here's one, this command right here. It's going to use a get child item and get all my personal certificates. I'm going to use that where object that don't match DoD, Microsoft, or MSIT, because I don't want to show any of those certificates that I have. And then I'm going to sort it by the not before, which is the issue date of the tickets, of the certificates.
That's cool.
So here, and then I did a format list because it returns a lot of properties, and I chose just the properties I wanted. And as you can see, it's sorted by not before. So so it's got the oldest first ticket or certificate that I've been issued.
Right. That's actually very cool.
Yeah, if you want to find the newest user, again, we're going to go back to my 80 users variable here, and I'm going to sort it by the created date. And so I piped out the SID here instead of the name because I don't want to show you my naming convention for my user accounts. And you can see the latest, the last user I created was on January 3rd. So if you're in a big organization, you just want to find out when the last user was created, you can use this command and find out what the last user was, get the username, and then go find the admin who created him last. Maybe they're not following the build document or they built them wrong. And then another way that I use the sort object is if I want to find out the last driver that was installed on my system. So here I'm using the WMI object, Win32 PMP signed driver, and this puts out the last driver that was installed, and I sort it by driver date. And as you can see here, 2015-10-29. So October 29th was last time I had a driver installed on this machine.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I
Yeah,
actually like that. That's pretty
so
useful.
yeah, that's one of the things I'll ask admins when I go into their site. I'll be like, how are you guys keeping up with drivers? When was the last time you had a driver update? And usually it's years. And, you know, I was just at a customer where we had to update the NIC drivers on their failover cluster because they were 3 years old. And it really solidified the performance of that failover cluster once we did that.
That's awesome.
So going on, so now we've filtered, we've sorted them, and now what we're going to do is we're going to select the properties that we want to display. So you've already seen I've used select object a couple times already. I'm going to get into all the properties that I use with select object. When I went through and looked at all my scripts, I had about 66 scripts on my local machine here, and I had select object called 160 times. So this is by far the one I use the most. So what we're going to do here is we're going to compare the property asterisk. So if I just do a get item, this is just going to get me the information on the local folder. I only get these 3 properties for this folder. If I do a select object property asterisk, it gets me all these properties. So your property asterisk is going to show you all the properties. You can get all the information on the objects. And the reason it doesn't show you all that information initially is because it's a performance hit, especially if you're getting all the users in a 200,000 user domain. You get all those users. 6 properties per user account is going to load a lot faster than the 20 or 30 properties with all of them.
Especially if you're doing it against some DC remotely on,
absolutely,
over the wire.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to skip that real quick. So that would show me the difference between the get 80 user without it and with it. Again, it returns about 6, and with the property on, it gives you, I think, about 23 in my particular experience. So the next one we're going to go with is expand property. So if I do this get module Azure select object as property path, what it shows me is the path property of the module Azure. So this gives me all my Azure PowerShell commandlets. If I want to know where that module lives because I want to copy it to a machine that doesn't have internet access and I don't want to download it, I can copy the module directly over to that machine. I don't have to go down to the internet and install it.
Hey, I got a question for you. When you do that, is there anything that you have to do to register that module with PowerShell?
Not at all. As long as it's in the PS module paths directory, one of those directories, it will automatically import it.
Okay, cool.
So when I do this select object dash property path, what it does, you see how it's got the path here and then these dashes? That's telling me that the path is a property of this. So if I tie it to a variable, I still have to hit the dot and do the variable dot path to get just this text. When you do expand property, it's the same command, you get just the text. So that's something to keep in mind when you're creating variables with these.
Awesome.
So now we're going to do one with the get ACL. And we want to see what access controls are on the folder that I'm in right now. And as you can see, the regular property here, it's got these braces, which means that it's an array. It's got more information than just one thing. So if you expand that property, it will give you all that information. Another place where I use the expand property is when I'm looking in the event log. So in this case, I want to find, I'm going to get win event list log asterisk. That lists all the event logs that are on your system, and I'm going to get a log name that matches group. So I'm going to look at the group policy, and I'm going to select that log. I'm going to select the log name property. So these are all the groups. As you can see here, it's got the log name and it's got the groups. When you do the expand property, it's still going to give me the same information, but again, notice that log name's gone. So now this is just an array of strings as opposed to a property with an array of strings.
Right.
All right, so that takes care of expand property. Now we're going to go to first and last objects and skip objects. So when you do this, these are useful when you're returning a lot of objects or you're looking in an array. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get all the text files in this directory. You see, and each one of those was a text file. But I just want the first one because I just want to know what properties a text file has. That's usually where I use this first one, is when I know I'm going to do something to a bunch of files, or a bunch of objects, I'm going to throw it into a for each loop. I'm going to do something to each one, but I just need to know what the properties are first. So I'll typically just grab the first one to see what I can look at. So like right here, attributes, archive. In that other, when I started earlier, we had the one where we specified directory. This is the attribute where it will specify whether it's a file or a directory by archive or directory.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to use last object. So similar to checking out when the last driver I had installed, I'm going to do a git hotfix, and I'm going to sort it by the installed on date. I'm going to select the last one. So see when the last hotfix I had on the system was installed. And that was installed today. I just had a big push right before we started this.
Yep, I got one too.
Okay. And the other way you can do a last object is you can use it for text files. When you have typically a log file or something that's scrolling constantly, you can do a select object dash last whatever to get the last number of lines in. And so I use this netlogon scrub.log to simulate my netlogon file, but again, I went through and got rid of any identifying information. And so this will get the last 10 lines in that log file, so you can look at.
Cool.
Now, skip object is useful when you need to skip something, usually a text file or an object that's text. It's a bunch of strings in an array. You know that the outputted information never changes. So I'll use the skip to get to just the information I need. So in this particular case, I'm using the ping command. And when you use ping, it puts out, it's got this nice information on, what it's pinging, what comes back with what, the type of data, and that's got all this. I'm going to split it, which breaks each one of these lines of text. It splits automatically on the space and puts all of that into an array. And I'm going to then skip the first two and select the first one. And what that does is that's just going to give me the FQDN of that ping device, my machine. All right. So now we're going to get into the unique parameter. If I get all the commands, and we talked about this a little last time when we talked about using the right verb-noun combination, and then if you do a get verb, it's got the standard ones, but that's not what everybody uses. So if you want to find out real world what people are using for their verbs and their commands, I'm going to use get command dash verb asterisk. That's going to get me all the verbs of all the commandlets that are installed on my system, some 3,000 commandlets. And this dot verb, I'm pulling out just the verb property, which will give me just their names, and then I'm going to sort it. And what you're going to see here is you're going to see I have duplicates of a lot of these. So all those gets, each one of those.
Yeah.
Now that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
If I do a unique, it's just going to get me the unique information on each of those. So I don't have any duplicates. So if I'm going to create a commandlet or I'm sorry, not a commandlet, if I'm going to create a function or a script, I would probably choose one of these types of verbs.
Okay.
All right. Let me see if this works real quick. What this is doing, this get Azure VM image, it's going to find out all the images that are available on my Azure subscription. And again, you're going to see the same thing. You're going to see a lot of duplicates. So, and the reason they have duplicates is there's different versions. Usually we keep about the last 3 versions of Windows OSs. and it's a rolling last 3 versions. And you'll only see that if you expand the properties. But I really don't want to look at that because I'm going to use the latest version of whatever OS I want to pick. So again, I'll pipe that to a select object-unique, and it will just give me the unique operating systems to choose from. It simplifies my choice. So I got 2012 data center, R2 data center, and a few other things. All right. So now what we're going to get into is changing the custom labels on the select object. So if you notice that on some of these I had select object in the property, like up here I had property log name, you can actually change this property into a and throw some scripts, throw some logic in there, and that's what I'm going to show you here. Here I'm going to compare 2 objects, and it's looking for a difference in the two. What the files have is it's got a list of my services and the status that they're in. And the compare object goes through and it compares the 2 files side by side, and it tells you which file had which thing. So on my right file, it had the 132 time was running, and on the left file, it was stopped. And so I'm going to tell you the reason it was stopped, or not the reason it was stopped, the reason was the test. But the stop simulates when I first booted what the status of that service was, and the one on the right was right before I reboot what the status was. So what I'm going to do in here is you see this name and status? Those are properties of the compare object.
Okay.
So name and status. So I'm not going to mess with those. What I'm going to mess with is this side indicator. These arrows aren't very helpful to me. I'm going to relabel them. So I keep, the first thing you do is you throw it in an asterisk, I'm sorry, not an asterisk, an ampersand, and then the braces. And that tells you that you're going to create a custom label. And so the name, side indicator, is the label. I kept that the same. It's still going to be called side indicator. Then you throw in this semicolon, and the expression is the logic. So side indicator, I know that these values right here, it's just text. So I can do a replace. And that's what I did here. I call this with the $_dot. That's the automatic variable that's created when you look at an object. And so the side indicator, and I put those in parentheses because that's got to be evaluated first. And I'm going to do a replace command. That's a method for strings. And then I'm going to replace this with startup. And you do that with either in quotes or single quotes. You would use double quotes when you're going to evaluate the string. So that's typically what you're going to use unless you have special characters. If you have special characters, use the single quotes. That means literal interpretation. And the double quotes means that it's going to evaluate it.
Okay, that's cool.
So I'm going to replace the left arrow with startup and the right arrow with shutdown.
Okay.
I've changed what the select object is displaying.
Yeah.
All right. And so one more time, I'm going to go to get WMI object, and we'll see when my last start time was, when last time my computer was rebooted, and the time it is now. And I don't like those formats, right? I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a custom label here. I'm going to keep the same label name, as you can see here, but this expression is convert to DateTime. That's the same property that I was looking at. I'm sorry, the property is last boot up time. I'm going to use this convert to DateTime that I stole from the internet, and I pasted it in here. And I know it would work. And what this does is it's going to convert those to readable dates. And that was done inside the select object property.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so that's really useful when you're going to output this to logging or some kind of a file that some kind of out file to record what you did.
Just as a quick question, can I define the format of that output file? In other words, if I wanted to, could I create an HTML file and have it output to the HTML file and then make that accessible via a browser?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that would be one way. You can also export as a CSV so that it opens nicely into Excel.
That's cool.
All right. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to combine some where and select statements. So again, let's see here. I'm going to return the IP address of that ping command that I used before. So again, what I did was the ping puts out a string of text. That's the problem with the old commands. It always output text, and so that's in this parentheses right here. And what it does is that string of text. I'm going to skip the first two and select the first one, and that is the actual lines of text. I haven't thrown the split in there yet. On the earlier command, I did a split immediately, which started looking at the individual words as opposed to the lines of the text. So I'm skipping the first two lines of text, getting the next line, which is the first one. And once I have that line of text, now I'm throwing in the split parameter, and that's going to split it on the spaces. And then I'm going to filter out inside that array. So once it splits into those different into the different texts, that becomes an array. And then you pipe it using the pipe command to that where object. And the pipe throws it one at a time. And the where object is where that automatic variable, which is the $_ from the pipe, is like this, asterisk dot asterisk dot asterisk dot asterisk.
Okay.
Which is going to be your IPv4. The trim command, because it's string, what it does is it gets rid of any spaces that are leading or ending. So it gets rid of any leading or trailing spaces. And then the trim end will, from the rightmost part of that string, it will work backwards and trim it. So in the $ping command here, I'm sorry, $ping, when I do the ping, what it's, yeah, because I threw a -4 parameter on there, so it does my IPv4. It's going to skip the first two lines, these two.
Okay.
It's going to select this first line here, and then it's going to split it on the spaces. I'm going to skip the first two, so it's going to skip those two, and then I'm going to select the third one.
Right.
And then it's going to pull this out, but it's still going to have that
colon.
That colon at the end, and that's what that trim end does.
That's cool.
And so that just pulls out the IPv4 using a ping command. Now, of course, you could just use a PowerShell command to resolve the IP address of a machine. But sometimes you're working with the output of old VB scripts or something that you already have. So I spend a lot of time working with a text input. All right, and then the other time you do a where and a select is when you're searching files. So if I'm going to do a file name here, use where object. So when I was doing my test to find what commandlets I use the most, I did something very similar. I went into all my scripts. I used a get content to open the script, and each line of text, I put it into a big hash table, and I counted the number of times that showed up. And then I created an out file with the command. So this is the where object text file, all the times I use the where object. So what it's going to do is it's going to read in that file, and then it's going to search for the term, for my search variable, which is the term where object. And then it's going to return just the line information. Because when you do a select string, it will return more information. It'll give you the line number it's on, formatting, the length, and a few other things. The actual line is the .line property of that. And then we're going to type that to a where object. And I only want the strings where it starts with the term where object. So if I have a command that I pipe to where object on a single line, it's not going to return that. It's only going to return the lines that start with where object.
Okay.
And that's what you'll see here. So another place you'd use where and select is with when you're searching for, in this particular case, I'm going to find all the aliases that are that resolve to get child item. I want to find out all the aliases that's what get child item resolves to. And as you can see here, dir, gci, and ls. That are all the aliases, and that resolves to get child item. And I use the select object name and resolved command because this property right here, resolved command, doesn't return automatically with the get alias output. So I had to make sure I got that property before I piped it to the where object.
I gotcha.
And so now I'm going to talk about get child item. With get child item, like I talked about last time, you can use that with anything that's listed as a PowerShell drive. So if you import the Active Directory module, you'll have a drive called AD. Most of these other ones are default. They come with the with PowerShell. We talked about functions and the variable and the environmentals. To see what the environmental variables are, you can do a get child item env : And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find an executable in my home path called makecertain.exe and recurse. So it's going to search my entire home drive for that one executable and then return it.
Okay. And it's just going to find the first one it comes to,
yep,
right?
Just the first one. And so there it is. And it's in my program files, Microsoft Message Analyzer. It's in there for some reason.
Okay. And there would only be one anyway, right?
That exe?
Oh, wait. No, there could be multiples because it's searching the drive, not a directory.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure
and
I got
the recurse on there as well.
Yep.
Yep. And so this
so
would
if
be
you,
like,
hang on a second. So if you change that first /1 to first/8, it would search all of the directories until it hit 8 and then stop.
yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Next point I would use that is if I want to find the last time a folder was updated. You'll see this with log files. Certain pieces of software have log files in different directories, and you want to see the last time a directory was modified, and that will tell you which log file it was updating. That's kind of a manual when you're really searching in the weeds for what went wrong with something. So it's going to look in my user profile and sort my files based on the last write time. And that's what you'll see here. That's what get child item does. My last write time, 3/26.
Yep.
And my oldest one was 10/23 on July 23rd.
Okay, cool.
Another thing get child item did, we touched on this a little bit, was the hidden. I want to find hidden files only. And then we talked about the environmental variables. Get child item.
By the way, I noticed that just wasn't files, it was directories as well.
Oh, the hidden?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's anything with the hidden attribute.
Yep. Cool.
All right. And so now to finish this up here, I'm going to talk about working with the registry. So you can use get child item because the registry is in the PS drives. We got current user and local machine. So what I'm going to do here is maybe you want to see what domain or what you want to find out what websites are in your trusted zones for a particular user. I can do a get child item on that zone map domains, which is what that maps to, and find out all my trusted domains, what protocol is allowed for that, and the 1, 2, and the number there, 1, 2, and 0. Tells you what trust level it is. Whether it's a trusted, intranet, internet, or public, whatever all the options are. So the important thing to know about is when you do a get child item inside a registry, it returns the subkeys as objects. So these are subkeys. This is not a value and data. This is the key. This is the value. And this is the data.
Okay.
So if you want to return just one key with its values, you would use get item. So now we're going to switch from the trusted sites. We're going to go to the time zone information. And this is how you would change the time zone of your computers. When I do a get item on this time zone information, this is the key. Each one of these is a value, and this is its data. And as you can see, this is one object. If you
Yeah.
want to return just the values, you would use the getItem property. And this is the same command. It gets rid of the key, even though you're still looking at the same key, and it gives you
Right.
just the values and their data. And then if you want to return just the data of one particular key, like I'm going to do the bias here, you would use getItem property value. And that's how you work with getChildItem and getItem item property in the registry.
Wow, that was cool, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that.
No problem.
Yeah. So we need to have you back on so that we can actually write a script that goes through, using some of this stuff.
All right. I'll keep an eye out, see what I can come up with.
Yeah. It should be easy for you, right?
So it's funny because people are like, how do you do PowerShell? And you can do so much with it that it's really hard to answer that question. And so I asked them for an example, like, what are you trying to do? And then we'll do that with PowerShell.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I get the same thing with network traffic. I taught a network protocols analysis class yesterday and today. And, you get to the point where it's just, well, what are you looking for? And let's go find that and tear that apart. And I'll show you how that works. And but it's still a lot of fun. I love geeking out on stuff like this, man.
Yeah.
I didn't really talk a whole lot because I was kind of absorbing the whole thing. It was pretty cool. Yeah. So anyway, I want to thank you for being on. Certainly enjoy having you on, and you're welcome as a guest anytime. So I was serious about the third episode with scripting. I think that would be awesome. And all I can say is, wow, that was killer.
Yeah, I have fun with it. I will work on PowerShell scripts all night if I let myself.
Yeah, no, I know you will. I know you will, buddy. All right. Well, guys, without further ado, that's your taste of Premiere.